Oh boy. Oh boy. um, my other harmonica is... Oh, there it is. Okay. Alright, whatever. Hey, good morning. It is I, your host, Pogo Kiddo, with yet another episode of Redstone Lapis Lazuli. Let's go. The Switch. Oh, okay. So, I don't know how things are going to work this morning because Microsoft decided to push an update. And, yeah, I had to work on a bunch of stuff before I could even start the show this morning. So thank you for bearing with me. I also got new drivers from AMD, which I think are really great, actually. No, actually. But yeah, so what are we looking at? I'm inside a thing. So like, here's my farm, here's my farm, here's my farm. And I decided to actually use this building. It was at first housing for a villager, but then the villager got lost. And I found out the villager had wandered all the way into here, into the nether, and was in the nether. So I had to build a series of contraptions to stop villagers and stuff from walking in. And then this house was abandoned for a long time. And then, oh wait, I should do this. It was abandoned for a long time. And then I came back and I'm like, hey, what if I do something with this thing? So like, I had found out that my rainbow sheep farm for some reason had stopped working. So I had to come back here and rework the rainbow sheep farm so that it would be more robust. It wouldn't break. So yeah, and that was the whole last episode, or let's play, and it was fun. It was good. It was a good time. I had a good time, man. Like, it's fun to like work on stuff that will like lead to a profit. I don't know. It's just fun to work on stuff that works. So I spent a bunch of time trying to figure out, well, how do I have this problem. I have this problem. All the farmers live over there. All my farmers live far away from where I live. So I end up harvesting all these crops, but then I don't have any, I don't want to put them in my inventory and carry them. So I end up just stashing them, but they just sit here. And it doesn't do me any good because the farmers, I need to trade with them to get money. So I'm like, hey, look how well this thing works. This thing works great. This is my melon and pumpkin farm, and it works fantastic. This thing's amazing. And what happens is pumpkins or melons grow. When they grow, they get seen by the observers, which push out the pistons and pushes them into the hopper, which brings them to the underground processing system, and then it all gets flushed out and brought over there to the village. Right? Pretty nice. Pretty nice. This is what we want to do, because that way I don't have to harvest or do anything. I just collect the melons and give them to the farmers. Easy. So I'm like, why don't I do the same thing with the vegetables? Let's do the same thing with all these crops. So I had to work that out because it's not the same system. I can't use an observer to automatically harvest them. I have to manually harvest this stuff. And then I have to manually put it in there. So I had to figure out a system where the minecart would stay here until it was absolutely full. It is not absolutely full yet. It's not full yet because can fit in 63 more things. Any rate, it will bounce off and it will go underground. And I want it to go to the other to the farm. So I'm just gonna make that underground system. That's all I'm gonna do. But the first part was to work this out, and this is pretty easy, right? It's resting on a detector rail. So the detector rail detects how much stuff is in the minecart, and that detector rail is being compared by this comparator. Da da da. So because the cart is not absolutely full, the signal strength coming out of this detector rail is only 14 out of a maximum 15. So the comparator is reading that, and it says, oh, this is 14. But on the other side, I have this redstone brick, and you can't see it, but there's redstone dust on the brick going into the side of the comparator. So the comparator is comparing this signal, which is 15, because it's right on top of the redstone block, with this signal, which is 14, because the chest isn't full. But when the chest is completely full, it will be 15. So the comparator will compare this signal and this signal. It will see, oh, both signals are the same. I will put out a signal. And that signal goes to, there's a redstone torch on the other side. And that redstone torch is powering that piston. So when that redstone torch gets turned off, it will allow the cart to proceed. So, yay! It took me a long time to figure that out. I had to watch a lot of videos and build some unsuccessful things. So then I'm like, oh, okay, so let's just make the rail to the station. But it's not so easy, right? Because like halfway through is this line. So like I need to make it a way to like be able to cross over this line without disturbing it. So I can do that, but I'll do it later. I'll work on that later. Like I can even keep it up here, right? I mean I have to, because it will be there right above my head and I won't even know it. So yeah, okay. Minecraft. What a great game, huh? And these new drivers, really, really nice. I really like the new drivers. They work very well. The new drivers from AMD. What? 25.3.3.1? I think that's what it is. Pretty nice. But Minecraft isn't the reason why you're watching me. Let's be real. I mean, it's a nerd thing. I love Minecraft, right? It's a fun game. Like, it's a shame I never found someone to play with me, but to play Minecraft with me. But that's okay. Ooh. Da 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 da. Things are going on in the United States. Now, I've been doing this show for a few years now. And I warned that Donald Trump was a Russian asset. And I think a lot of Americans just don't care. So they gave Donald Trump power, and Donald Trump is now turning the United States into the axis of evil. Donald Trump is joining up with the Russians against the democracies of the world. So I had a conversation with a Japanese friend of mine last night. He's Japanese. He's an English teacher. He lives in Japan, right? Like he's a teacher, and he teaches English in Japan, and he's Japanese. Not at like a private school or anything. At a public school. Yeah, he's Japanese. And I had a conversation and I asked him, man, what do the Japanese think about the realignment of the Americans towards Russia? And he said, I don't know anything about that. There has been no information delivered on mainstream Japanese media about Donald Trump's shift to Russia. They don't even know. The Japanese have no idea. I mean, maybe the politicians do or something, but the regular Japanese people, no clue that the Americans have switched sides. And that's kind of weird for me to say, the Americans have switched sides. Because, like, I'm an American, and I haven't switched sides, so I'm wondering, what does that make me? Like, I'm not on Team Russia, fuck that. I'm still pro-democracy, I'm still with all the allies, like, yeah, like, maybe Donald Trump and the Republicans are switching sides, but, like, and because they have the power over the government, they're able to order our military to switch sides, but like I'm a private citizen. I'm not under the command of Donald Trump. I haven't switched sides. So, but it's weird. It feels weird. Like okay. So the Salem Saturday Market hasn't started yet, but when it does, I'm gonna go back out there with my sign and start protesting again. Now, the last time I did it, I used my voice really loudly, which was really annoying to people, and they called the police on me like half a dozen times. And I never got arrested, but they were getting really close. The sixth time they were called out there, they were trying to find a reason to arrest me. So I don't know, like, if I should, like, be as protesty as I was the last time, because I can't get arrested, man. I don't really have a network here, so if I get arrested, I'm fucked. Well, I'll lose my job. Yeah, it'll be terrible. So. But yeah. Like, I don't know how many Americans. I know there are some Americans. I know there are some Russian Americans who are on board with Russia. Back in 2014, 10 years ago, when Russia was invading Ukraine for the first time. Well, the first time I was in Portland, and I took a cab, and my driver was Russian. And the Russian driver asked me what I thought about the whole thing. And at that time, I didn't know anything about it, right? I was a dumb American. I didn't know anything about what was going on in Ukraine. I had no idea. I didn't even know where Ukraine was. But he asked me about it, and I said, I don't really know. And he started going off on how Russia is in the right to do what they're doing to Ukraine. And I was like, okay. And then years later, while Donald Trump was president the first time, I would protest at the Salem Saturday Market. And there's a flower shop at the Salem Saturday Market that's owned by Russian Americans. And they dress in the traditional Russian garb. And that's the thing, right? In Oregon, like, the Russians were the first foreigners here. Like, before the other Europeans showed up, it was the Russians who were around here. So yeah, and then Russia sold Oregon to the Americans, right? And no consultation with the native tribes. Like, it's their land, but they weren't consulted. Anyways, so there's a lot of like ethnic Russians that live in Oregon, and yeah, while I was protesting Donald Trump and telling everyone that he's a Russian asset, the Russian shop owner came to me and, like, got mad at me. because I was protesting very loudly. And I asked her about Putin, and she said she sides with Putin. This Russian American. This was like maybe what, 8 years ago? Not 7 years ago. I asked her, and yeah, she was totally with Putin against the Americans, against the democracies. I'm like, what are you doing living here in the United States if you're a fucking authoritarian? But apparently this is where they live, authoritarians, right? I mean, shit, dude, they had apartheid for how many years here? They had slavery here. Like, of course there's a bunch of fucking authoritarians that live here. That's where we came from. Anyways. So yeah, that was like enlightened, you know, I thought that was like a weird one-off thing. I thought like, okay, so the Russians are on board with Russia overthrowing democracies. Okay, that kind of makes sense. They're Russian. But it didn't make sense to me that Americans would also join the Russians in attacking democracy. But I guess I should have known better. I should have known better. When the right-wing Americans were like, no, fuck the American government. You gotta trust Russia. You can't believe the Americans. It's only Russia that you can trust. Like, I should have known at that point. That yeah, they're gonna fucking flip. They're flipping. They're turning Nazi. Anyways, I didn't really get that many slides because, like, I don't know. Here, the first thing. Alright. First thing you gotta mention. I gotta mention. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are American values. That's true. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are American values. Because that's what differentiates us from the fascists. Remember, the fascists and the white supremacists don't believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. They hate diversity, equity, and inclusion. Move that over here. Ooh, okay. Come on, dude. There we go. They hate diversity, equity, and inclusion. They want everyone to be the same. And if you're not the same, they will do bad things to you. Okay, that's not working. But Americans, we are completely diverse. There's no one form of the American. There's no correct, I wouldn't say there's no correct form, because some forms are obviously wrong. But yeah, Americans are a diverse group of people. So you of course want to celebrate diversity. Now, if you're anti-American, you hate diversity. So you don't even want diversity. They will try to couch it. They will try to lie about it, right? That's because that's the other thing. Fascists. See, before I even get into the difference between Americans and fascists, I should probably like lay the groundwork here before I go there. So the main thing that differentiates Americans from fascists is the idea. It's the concept of integrity. Integrity. What is integrity? So, if you've like not played, but like watched some put that in there. If you've watched some sci-fi channels or sci-fi movies, there's a big space battle, and the ship is the shields are down on the spaceship, and then they get hit by a torpedo or something, and they're like, oh, hull integrity at 58% or something like that. Well, you heard that word, integrity, and they're talking about hull integrity. So you think about, well, integrity is when you, in terms of hull integrity, it's like how much can the ship hold itself together? Because if the integrity is gone, then the ship falls apart, right? And then there's no more ship. So integrity has some component of holding things together. Holding things together. So I'm not all that intelligent. I'm okay. But I went to Wikipedia for the true for a more complete definition. And this is what it says. It says, integrity is the quality of being honest and showing a consistent and uncompromising adherence to strong moral and ethical principles and values. In ethics, integrity is regarded as the honesty and truthfulness or earnestness of one's actions. Integrity can stand in opposition to hypocrisy. It regards internal consistency as a virtue and suggests that people who hold apparently conflicting values should account for the discrepancy or alter those values. The word integrity evolved from the Latin adjective integer, meaning whole or complete. In this context, integrity is the inner sense of wholeness, deriving from qualities such as honesty and consistency of character. So, the idea of integrity is the idea of wholeness, completeness, no contradictions, no hypocrisy, honest and open. That sounds like American values. Would you not agree? Of course. Of course. An American would want to have ascribed to them they'd like to have the quality of integrity. Because you have to understand, humans are more than just the physical anchors. We're more than just the bodies. Like we have a mind, we have a soul, we have a spirit. Like these things, while they're not tangible, they're still actual. Like the quality of integrity, you can't hold integrity, right? You can't. It's not something you can point to and be, oh, that's integrity. Here, I'm gonna get a big scoop of integrity and slop it on a ice cream cone. You can't do that. You can't do it because it's not real in that sense. But it is real. Integrity is indeed real because it's a quality. It's a quality. So when we speak of integrity, it applies to people in as much as their actions are congruent with their beliefs, and their beliefs and their values are consistent with one another, so that it's a complete whole that doesn't contradict itself. Fascism, on the other hand, is not at all concerned with integrity. Integrity is the quality of honestness, of honesty, truthfulness. And for a fascist, truthfulness is secondary. It's not even in the equation. They don't even care about it. Because for a fascist, the overriding quality is power. Power determines what is right. There is no universal morality other than power. What you can get away with. Whatever you can get away with is the right thing for a fascist. So Donald Trump recently said that about Ukraine coming under attack by Russia after the United States cut off aid. And Donald Trump said, well, that's what anyone would do. Because for Donald Trump, there is no moral, there is no morality other than power. So if you have the power, Donald Trump says, of course you would use it to take things from other people, because they don't have human rights. Don't exist to a fascist. Human rights aren't justice, not at all part of the equation. It's all about power. Donald Trump would often say, oh, it's unfair what happened to him. It's so unfair what happened to him. Why? Because Donald Trump feels that he had the power, and then so, like, those things shouldn't have happened to him because he had the power. Like, he was impeached. He's like, oh, that was so unfair. Was it unfair because it wasn't true? No. It was unfair because Donald Trump doesn't think things like that should happen to powerful people. So, integrity, the wholeness of a person. Fascists are not whole people. Their belief structure is riddled with contradictions. And if your belief structure is riddled with contradictions, you can't think properly. And if you can't think properly, you are easily manipulated. So that comes to back to this: diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are values, American values. Why? Because Americans believe and hold that there's a universal, that values are universal, and humans are essentially good. So diversity is the daughter of freedom, because when you, like, I think that's the thing that frightened a lot of Americans was freedom. Like, they weren't ready for it. Like, they thought they were ready for it. They believed they were ready for freedom, but they weren't really. Because when people are free, are truly free, then they will have a wonderful diversity of expressions of that freedom. That freedom will manifest itself in ways we never even thought possible until it happened. That's the greatness of freedom, is that it's able to manifest in unimaginable ways. And so, yeah, that should be a quality that's celebrated by Americans. If you value freedom, then you're gonna value the diversity that freedom brings. However, there are people who do not abide by the idea of freedom. The fascists. The fascists have a very, very strict idea of the correct form. That's the only correct way of doing it, according to the fascist. Anyone else is a deviant and must be oppressed. So for fascists, they're the opposite of diversity. They're about homogeneity. About everything being the same. So, equity. Now, we're not talking about like the money equity. We're talking about the social equity. Equity meaning equitable. Equitable. So there's that picture that, like, to explain it. I don't have it. I should probably look it up. Here, let me look it up real quick because it's pretty important. Equality versus equity. Oh shit! Yeah, there it goes. Oh, dude, I don't want to use AI. Fuck your AI. Dictionary.com. Oh man, I need something shorter than this. See, maybe I will use this then. All right, here's the AI. And I will judge if the AI is correct or not. Okay, Mr. AI, what do you say? Hey, you, what do you see? Dude, it's tiny. Come on, man. Why is it locked in like that? Snip and sketch. There you go. There you go. Okay. Equity means providing everyone with the same resources. Oh, equality. Equality means providing everyone with the same resources or opportunities, while equity involves giving individuals the specific resources they need to achieve fair outcomes based on their unique circumstances. Understanding this difference is crucial for addressing social injustices effectively. So get that. Equality means giving everyone the same thing, regardless of your situation. Equity means giving people specific things based on their specific circumstances. So for example, equality would be everybody gets $100 food stamps. That means the homeless people get $100 food stamps, which will help, but it won't really solve their situation. And the rich person's going to get $100 food stamps, which they're not even going to use. They don't even need it. They have no idea. They don't even need it. But for equality, you're going to give exactly the same thing to both sets of people, regardless of their situation. Equity, on the other hand, is about giving people what they need. So the homeless person is going to not only get food assistance, but they're also going to get shelter and health care. Whereas the rich person doesn't need shelter, doesn't need health care, doesn't need food assistance. They're not going to get it because they don't need it. And is that against the idea of fairness? No, it is not. It is consistent with the concept of justice. Equity is consistent with the concept of justice, whereas equality isn't always consistent. What's that famous statement? Both the rich and the poor are equally forbidden to sleep under bridges. The unspoken part is that, but rich people will have no need to sleep under bridges because they're rich. Only poor people would have a need to sleep under bridges, and therefore the law, even though it's equal, is not necessarily just. So equity is an important concept, an important nuance to have. It's not equality, it's equity. So these are American values, right? Equity, where does equity come from? Equity is the daughter of justice. Just as diversity is the daughter of freedom, equity is the daughter of justice. So finally, inclusion. Inclusion. So American society for a long time has been based on the opposite idea of exclusion, exclusive, excluding. The original American colonies excluded women from enfranchisement. From being, they had no vote and couldn't own property. Women. The early American government excluded black Americans because they were literally enslaved. after the institution of slavery was banned, black Americans were excluded via Jim Crow, apartheid, the apartheid system in the United States. So if you're trying to maintain integrity, right? Because that's the thing. You want to maintain integrity. Right. And you're honestly and accurately embodying diversity and equity. It's going to naturally emerge out of diversity and equity. Naturally, what's going to emerge is inclusion, where you include more and more people. You get more and more people into the in-group and have fewer and fewer people on the out-group. The idea is to get everyone inside. Because when you're inside, then you're vested. And when you're vested, you're more likely to participate. So, the only people opposed to these American ideals would be Nazis. Right? Nazis are the opposite of Americans. Nazis have a very, very strict way of being, so there's no freedom. Nazis, and because they have a very strict way of being, there's no diversity. And these strict ways of being don't account for people's individual circumstances. So it's not at all equitable. It's not at all equitable. If you're a person born into the out-group of a Nazi society, there's nothing you can do. I mean, you're in the out group just based upon your who you are. Nothing you did or said or anything else will put you in the in group, because it's your deviance is something inherent to you, not a product of your actions, but a mode of your being. Which means, yeah, there's like that's how you have illegal humans. Like, so yeah, be aware that the people attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion are the Nazis. So they're bad guys. But remember, there's a lot of fucking bad guys in our country. Like, how many people want to join Russia? Like, look at it, right? It's... So, I recall during the campaign, the 2024 campaign, Donald Trump and the Republicans always complained about the economy, Joe Biden's economy. They always complained about it. And then Donald Trump took power, and he implemented tariffs on all of America's trading partners. So that's going to crash our economy. Now, if you have integrity, then you're going to say, oh, well, I wanted to improve the economy, but now the economy is getting worse. Therefore, I would say, you would say that the person implementing these bad policies to make our economy worse is a poor choice for president. But you will find many Americans will overlook all the information in order to side with Donald Trump and say, no, he's doing the right thing. Those people lack integrity. They're like wispy ghosts. They're not even there. Oh, they're all stuck there. Why? What happened? They used to just fall down. Oh, did I not do it? There we go. Okay. Ah. A lot of bad guys in there. So yeah, we have a crisis of integrity in the United States. I mean, this is basically what's happened. We were cruising along on our economy, doing just fine, when Donald Trump comes in and puts tariffs in our economy, and we all crash. And Donald Trump says, "No pain, no gain." What are we gaining, dude? Ah, we're gaining nothing. We're losing. Like, it's so stupid. China's envoy to the EU. Oh, here we go. China's envoy to the EU, Liu She, appalled by Trump's treatment of Europe. In comments on the CPPCC sidelines, the diplomat reiterated that the Ukrainian peace cannot be determined only by US and Russia. So China is basically filling the void left by the United States. The EU was America's biggest trading partner, one of America's biggest trading partners. And we just fucked that. And hand that off to China. And you got to ask, well, why? Why would the United States do that? Well, if you're realigning yourself with Russia, you're gonna do things that help Russia out. And one way to help Russia out is to stop trading with Russia's enemies. So here's a French guy, right? I told you the Japanese had no idea that Donald Trump had turned to Russia. At least not this English teacher I talked to. And he's not a dumb guy. So like, and if none of the mainstream media in Japan is talking about it, then they don't even know. But the situation in France is totally different. Listen to their politician.
Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Premier ministre, Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, mes chers collègues, l'Europe est à un tournant critique de son histoire. Le bouclier américain se dérobe, l'Ukraine risque d'être abandonnée, la Russie renforcée. Washington est devenu la cour de Néron, un empereur incendiaire, des courtisans soumis et un bouffon sous kétamine chargé de l'épuration de la fonction publique. C'est un drame pour le monde libre, mais c'est d'abord un drame pour les États-Unis. Le message de Trump est que rien ne sert d'être son allié puisqu'il ne vous défendra pas, qu'il vous imposera plus de droits de douane qu'à ses ennemis et vous menacera de s'emparer de vos territoires tout en soutenant les dictatures qui vous envahissent. Le roi du deal est en train de montrer ce qu'est l'art du deal à plat ventre. Il pense qu'il va intimider la Chine en se couchant devant Poutine, mais Xi Jinping devant un tel naufrage est sans doute en train d'accélérer les préparatifs.
All right, here, let's start it over because this does no good. All right, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. Europe is at a critical turning point in its history. The American shield is slipping away. Ukraine risks being abandoned. And Russia is being strengthened. Washington has become the court of Nero. An incendiary emperor, submissive courtiers, and a buffoon on ketamine tasked with purging the civil service. This is a tragedy for the free world, but above all, it is a tragedy for the United States. Trump's message is that being his ally serves no purpose, as he will not defend you. He will impose higher tariffs on you than on his enemies, and he will threaten to seize your territories while supporting the dictators who invade you. The so-called king of the deal is demonstrating that the submissive art of the deal is what the submissive art of the deal is. He believes he will intimidate China by capitulating to Putin. But Xi Jinping, witnessing such a collapse, is undoubtedly accelerating preparations for the invasion of Taiwan. Never in history has a president of the United States surrendered to an enemy. Never before has one supported an aggressor against an ally. Never before has one trampled on the American Constitution, issued so many illegal decrees, dismissed judges who could oppose him, sacked the entire military leadership in one go, weakened all the counterpowers, and taking control of social media. This is not a mere illiberal drift. It is the beginning of a seizure of democracy. Let us remember that it only took just 1 month, 3 weeks, and 2 days to bring down the Weimar Republic and its constitution. I have faith in the resilience of the American democracy, and the country is already protesting. But in just 1 month, Trump has done more damage to America than in 4 years of his previous administration. We were at war with a dictator. We are now fighting against a dictator supported by a traitor. 8 days ago, at the very moment when Trump was patting Macron on the back at the White House, the United States voted at the UN alongside Russia and North Korea against the Europeans who were demanding the withdrawal of Russian troops. 2 days later, in the Oval Office, the draft dodger was giving moral and strategic lessons to the war hero Zelensky before dismissing him like a stable boy, ordering him to submit or resign. Last night, he took another step into disgrace by halting the delivery of promised weapons. What should we do in the face of this betrayal? The answer is simple. Stand firm. And above all, do not be mistaken. Ukraine's defeat would be Europe's defeat. The Baltic countries, Georgia and Moldova, are already on the list. Putin's goal is to return to Yalta, where half the continent was ceded to Stalin. The global south is awaiting the outcome of this conflict to decide whether they should continue respecting Europe or whether they are now free to trample it. What Putin wants is the end of the order established by the United States and its allies 80 years ago, whose first principle was the prohibition of acquiring territory by force. This principle is at the very foundation of the UN, where today the Americans vote in favor of the aggressor and against the victim, because Trump's vision aligns with Putin's. A return to spheres of influence, where big powers dictate the fate of smaller nations. I take Greenland, Panama, and Canada. You take Ukraine, the Baltics, and Eastern Europe. He takes Taiwan and the South China Seas. In Mar-a-Lago, Gulf oligarchs parties. This is called diplomatic realism. We are therefore alone. But the claim that resisting Putin is impossible is false. Contrary to Kremlin propaganda, Russia is struggling. In 3 years, the so-called second-best army in Europe has managed to gain only crumbs from a country with a population 3 times smaller. With interest rates at 25%, the collapse of foreign currency and gold reserves, and a demographic crisis, Russia is on the brink. The American lifeline to Putin is the greatest strategic mistake ever made during a war. The shock is severe, but it has a virtue. Europeans are emerging from denial. In a single day in Munich, they understood that Ukraine's survival and Europe's future are in their hands, and that they have three imperatives. First, accelerate military aid to Ukraine to compensate for the American abandonment, to ensure it holds, and of course, to secure its and Europe's place at the negotiating table. This will be costly. It will require ending the taboo on using frozen Russian assets. It will require bypassing Moscow's accomplices within Europe itself through a coalition of willing countries, with the United Kingdom, of course, included. Second, demand that any agreement includes the return of kidnapped children, prisoners, and absolute security guarantees. After Budapest, Georgia, and Minsk, we know what Putin's agreements are worth. Absolute shit. These guarantees must be backed by sufficient military force to prevent another invasion. Finally, and most urgently, because it will take the longest, we must rebuild the neglected European defense, which has relied on the American umbrella since 1945 and sabotaged since the fall of the Berlin Wall. It is a Herculean task, but it is on its success or failure that the leaders of today's democratic Europe will be judged in the history books. Friedrich Merz has just declared that Europe needs its own military alliance. This is an admission that France has been right for decades in advocating for strategic autonomy. Now it must be built. Massive investment will be needed. Reinforcing the European Defense Fund outside the Maastricht debt criteria. Harmonizing weapons and ammunition systems. Accelerating Ukraine's EU admission, since it now has the largest army in Europe. Rethinking the role and conditions of nuclear deterrence based on French and British capabilities, and relaunching missile defense and satellite programs. The plan announced yesterday by Ursula von der Leyen is an excellent starting point, and much more will be needed. Europe will only become a military power again by becoming an industrial power once more. In short, we must implement the Draghi report for real. But Europe's true rearmament is its moral rearmament. We must convince public opinion that in the face of war, fatigue, and fear, and especially against Putin's collaborators, both the far right and the far left. They once again stood in the National Assembly yesterday, Prime Minister, before you, arguing against European unity and European defense. They claim to want peace. What neither they nor Trump say is that their peace is capitulation, the peace of defeat, the replacement of de Gaulle's Zelensky with a Ukrainian Pétain, and at Putin's beck and call. The peace of collaborators who, for 3 years, have refused to support the Ukrainians in any way. Is this the end of the Atlantic Alliance? The risk is great, but in recent days, the public humiliation of Zelensky and the series of reckless decisions taken over the past month have finally stirred Americans into action. Poll numbers are plummeting. Republican representatives are being met with hostile crowds in their districts. Even Fox News is becoming critical. The Trumpists are no longer in their prime. They control the executive branch, Congress, the Supreme Court, and social networks. But in American history, the defenders of freedom have always prevailed. That's us. They are beginning to rise again. The fate of Ukraine is decided in the trenches. But it also depends on those in the United States who fight for democracy. And here on our ability to unite Europeans, to find the means for our collective defense, and to restore Europe as the great power it once was, and hesitates to become again. Our parents defeated fascism and communism at the cost of great sacrifice. The task of our generation is to defeat the totalitarianisms of the 21st century. Long live free Ukraine. Long live democratic Europe. That's a fucking great speech that the French guy gave. And you can see from the European perspective, the United States is gone, dude. We've been taken over. So in a lot of ways, you and I, we're the resistance. We're the American resistance to fascism. Like, yeah, Ukraine is fighting for freedom, but so are we. I mean, my grandparents fought fascism. It's not like we haven't done it. So this is a failure right here. Fail! Gavin Newsom is trying to position himself for a presidential run. But he made a major mistake. He started a podcast, and his first guest on the podcast was a Nazi. And this Nazi got Gavin Newsom to agree with all the other Nazis. And endorsed transphobia. He's against trans people. So, you know, remember how I was telling you the other day that the issue is privileged people? Gavin Newsom is a privileged person. And he used his privilege to attack a non-privileged group. So, and why? So he can gain more power. When you put power over people, then you no longer represent the resistance. So you're out, Gavin Newsom. You're out. Donald Trump blames the globalists. Donald Trump blames globalists for stock market sell-off. So, yeah, the stock market's crashing now because of that's what Donald Trump is wanted, right? He implemented all these tariffs on America's allies, and that wrecked the economy. That's what he wanted. You know, that's what's bad for America is good for Russia. So yeah, he wrecked the economy, but because he's a fascist, he's trying to offload blame for it to someone else. And what's the group he blamed? He blamed globalists. What the fuck are globalists? Like, what is that? Like, no one uses that word, globalists. What the fuck, globalists? Then you find out, well, the only people that use that word globalists are Nazis. Because globalists, remember I was telling you about dog whistles? Like Lee Atwater? Like, it's another, so the word globalist is another way for Nazis to say Jew. Because for the Nazis, they all believe that Jews have like some global conspiracy, control over the world or something. They have, and that's why they can hate Jews, because of this conspiracy, belief in the conspiracy. It's not real. It's totally not true. like if it were true, why would like so many of them die? Like in the Holocaust. Like, it's stupid. It's a stupid idea. But, you know, Nazis have no integrity. So they will shift and bend in any direction for power. So that's what Donald Trump is doing. In order to maintain power, he's blaming the traditional Nazi scapegoat. And the way he did it was through coded language. Not by calling them out directly, but by using the code word of globalist. That normies aren't going to understand, but Nazis will. So here's the criminalization, or the weaponization of government. So Donald Trump strips security clearances of law firm over Steele dossier. Now, if you remember, Christopher Steele was a former intelligence agent for Great Britain. So he had contacts. And he went free agent. And he was hired by a conservative group to fund and to find opposition research against Donald Trump. And he started doing it. And he did it. He was doing it. But then Donald Trump became the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party. So the conservative group stopped funding the opposition research against Donald Trump. Then the Democrats picked it up and started funding it. But then they too stopped paying for it. So Christopher Steele, on his own, making no money, decides to go public with his findings. And in his, remember, his findings were raw intelligence. Raw intelligence. The rawest stuff ever. He doesn't know if it's true or not. That's not his fucking job, to find out if it's true or not. His job was to get the information. So he got this information. And a lot of the information he got, like, I'm sure some of it was not true. I'm sure of it, right? Because it's raw information. He had no idea. He just picked it up. But a lot of what he said turned out to be true. What did he say? He said that there was cooperation and coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russian government in order to get Donald Trump into a position of power to help Russia. That's what the Steele dossier said, and that's true. It was backed up by the intelligence community. It was backed up by the Mueller report, and it was backed up by the Senate Select Intelligence Committee. Who was the head of the Senate Select Intelligence Committee? Why, that was Mark Rubio. So it's true. Donald Trump worked with the Russian government. It's true. The only question is, it's gonna hit this. I gotta like fix it. Anyways, the only question, so we know this is true, but Donald Trump is a vindictive asshole. I mean, look at the guy, dude. He's got like, he's a narcissist. So he nurses injuries like crazy in order to like pay back for retribution. He nurses not injuries, grudges. He nurses grudges like crazy so he can get revenge. So that's what he's doing right here. Out of nowhere, like years after the fact, years and years and years after the fact, Donald Trump is going after the law firm that represented Christopher Steele. Not because they did anything wrong, right? I mean, like, no, just because of the fact that they represented the guy who made Donald Trump look bad. That's why. Because Donald Trump doesn't want the truth to get out. What's the truth? That Donald Trump's a fucking Russian agent. The same thing we've been saying over and over and over and over and over again. Oh yeah, US intel block blamed for Russian missile strike on Americans. So some Americans were staying in a hotel in Ukraine, and then Donald Trump switched sides to Russia. So Russia fires missiles into Ukraine to attack its civilians, to kill regular people, that was being stopped by American anti-missile systems. Like the Americans under Biden set up an anti-missile system so that Russia couldn't fire missiles and kill civilians in Ukraine. Well, Donald Trump took that away. He took that away. So Ukraine was struck by a bunch of missiles fired by Russia, and there's a hotel where Americans were staying that got struck by a Russian missile. They didn't die, but they were put in danger because of Donald Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump switched sides. Donald Trump is on Team Russia. USA will no longer participate. USA will cease all future military exercises in Europe. So USA and Europe have a treaty called NATO, and it's a defensive treaty that they would defend one another. And of course they have military exercises to better integrate their forces so that they can better work together. Well, Donald Trump has switched sides. He's now enemies of Europe, and he's joined the Russians. So why would he have any use to participate in European exercises? He wants to participate in Russian exercises to attack Europe. So, I mean, like, what do you want me to tell you, dude? Donald Trump switched sides. So, the United States was partners with other Anglophone countries to do this spy network called Five Eyes. All the Anglophone countries would work together to share intelligence to thwart terrorism. So that's America, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand would all work together, share intelligence to stop terrorism and to thwart the actions of their enemies, collective enemies. Well, the United States has switched sides, and it no longer supports the Anglo countries. Instead, it's gonna, because they're all democracies. So the United States no longer supports democracies. It's on the side of dictatorships with Putin. So because of that, the other four members of the Five Eyes groups want to kick out the United States. They're like, why are we going to share intel with you when you're just going to give it to Russia? Like, that's fucking stupid. And any intel you give to Russia goes to Iran. So Israel doesn't want to share intel with the United States anymore, because the United States gives it to Russia, and Russia gives it to Iran, and Iran uses it to attack Israel. So even the Israelis don't want to give information to the Americans anymore. Yeah, dude, we're in a rough spot. Things are not looking good. I mean, I'm glad that the French guy sees us and says, "Oh, the Americans are starting to wake up." I hope we're waking up. I hope people are fucking waking up to what's going on. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be alone out there again when I go to the Salem Saturday Market. But I mean, I don't know how effective that is, anyways. But like, yeah, we gotta keep these protests rolling. And we gotta be calling our representatives to make sure they know what's going on. Like, all my reps are Democrats. Even though my area voted majority for Donald Trump, all my reps are Democrats. Yeah, I wonder how much of Donald Trump's popularity here in Oregon has to do with the ethnic Russians that live here. Because ethnic Russians seem to be on board with Putin. Of course, so do white people. So like, white people tend to be on board with Russia. They all voted for the fucking puppet. Right, that's a fact. The majority of white people voted for Donald Trump. That's a fact. And Latino men, the majority of Latino men, all voted for Russia against democracy. Yeah, there's a big split in between Democrats and Republicans in terms of values. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go out there and get attacked by Republicans again. Like, attacked. Like, physically attacked this time. I was physically attacked last time too, but it was pretty muted. I think it's going to be a lot worse this time. I don't know, man. I don't know. We're in upside down land. I have no idea what's going on. Like, all the Republicans turned to Russians. Like, oh no. All right. Well, until next time, right? All right. Peace. Pogo Kiddo out. Stop.